This is a test. Definitely a test. Hey Booktube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March. Let's see. My Bookish week for Saturday, October 2nd. It's October now. I love October in New England. It is the best place to be in October. I've seen a little bit of changing leaves. My neighbor across the street has a maple tree, and the top of his tree is starting to change to orange. So I'm really looking forward to the foliage. Okay, nobody come here because every time October hits, New England is swarming with visitors. I just tried to destroy the tourist industry. So anyway, I'll give you a quick COVID update. My husband tried to go back to work yesterday, and I'm filming on Friday, so he tried to go back on Thursday. And he only made it a couple hours, and his boss took him to the ER because he couldn't breathe and was diagnosed with COVID pneumonia. So he's back home for at least another 2 weeks because they told him in the ER that he's still COVID positive. So his quarantine has reset, which means my quarantine has reset. I was slated to go back to work on Monday, but I will be doing that from home for at least 2 weeks. And we are speaking to my daughter's school to find out what are the guidelines because she has no symptoms. We might have to get her retested to go back to school, but we don't know yet. So the poor kid might be going back to online learning, I don't know, for at least a couple of weeks. I'm doing okay. My recovery has stalled a little bit. I still have the throat thing. I still have the congestion. I have an unpredictable cough. But nothing is severe. It's just everlasting. So I've been able to read, but I'm still just like, I've had to cancel quite a bit. I've had to, I had a book group meeting that I can't go to. I clearly can't go to work. So I've had to drop some book projects that I've had, and that's pretty much it. I'm still doing all right. I'm going really stir crazy. I'm waiting for my deck furniture to dry off so I can go outside and hang out there. So we'll see. I'm getting there. I know I'm getting there. I did manage to read 3 books this past week, and this was the first time that I've read a book. Well, maybe not the first time, but the first time in a very long time that I read a book that made me feel like an utter moron, and I'll talk about that last. The first book I finished is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This is a psychological thriller, and I read Sometimes I Lie by her, which blew me away. I'm not typically a thriller reader, but after I read Sometimes I Lie, every time I see another one of her books come out, I grab it. And there's 2 books between Sometimes I Lie and this one that one of them I own, but I haven't read them yet. But I got this one from Book of the Month and read it. This is the story of Amelia and Adam, a married couple. And Amelia has won a weekend getaway to a Scottish bed and breakfast, a Scottish inn in the Scottish countryside. So they decide they can give their marriage a little bit of a pep talk, and they decide to take this free weekend trip, and they drive into the Scottish countryside in the middle of a snowstorm. Adam is a screenwriter, and Amelia works at a dog rescue organization. And so we get the feeling in the very beginning of the book that their marriage is kind of in trouble, it's kind of rocky, and maybe this trip will kind of boost their marriage. Or will it? We find out from the blurb and parts of the story that maybe one of them won't be coming back. And it goes between Amelia's perspective and Adam's perspective. And there's also some letters interspersed regarding each anniversary and what type of gift goes with each anniversary, whether it's paper or granite or metals, something like that. We all know every anniversary has some sort of material that goes with it. So there's letters interspersed. But very early on, it's clear that the two spouses aren't really communicating well. We get to read what's in each of their heads, and there's definitely a suspenseful aspect of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Who's going to do what to who? And Alice Feeney is the absolute master of the plot twist. I was blown away once I got to that point, and after the main twist that she puts in her books, it's like one comes after another, and it's just absolutely a crazy read, just so fun. I was like, what is going on? And so I had a great time reading this book. I would definitely recommend if you've got it from this is my Book of the Month copy. If you're planning on reading it, this was a fun one, so I definitely recommend it. The next book I read was what I call a grown-up picture book. This is Behind the Scenes at Downton Abbey, and this is written by Emma Rowley, with a foreword by the executive producer Gareth Neame. If anybody is a Downton Abbey fan, pick up this book. And you know where I got this copy? At my local Dollar Tree. So this is basically a companion book for the show. Nice little end papers. But it's got it's just filled, chock full of photographs of Downton Abbey and the sets and the actors. It's got quite a bit of text in the front of the book, and there's accompanying text to all of the pictures and the photos, the actors and the people in the show. There's everything from the music, the writing, the settings, which were so important for the show, the castle that it was filmed at, the furnishings. It's just, the set designs, it's just so delightful. It was such fun to read. There's a picture of one of the dinner parties. And if you're a fan, I rush out and try to buy this book. I don't know if you're going to find it for $1 like I did, but I was so happy. Just the costumes, everything about the show. This one was fun, inside the wardrobe. So this book is just filled with just everything about the show, if you were curious. How they do the costumes, the makeup, the hair, the castle, the storyline, how the show came about. And I was a huge fan of Downton Abbey. I am now on my 4th Netflix binge of Downton Abbey because in my last 2 weeks of haze, I went through Grace and Frankie. I went through, what else did I go through? I watched a few comfort movies. I haven't watched Pride and Prejudice yet, again. I think I watched Sense and Sensibility, and there were a couple other movies. I'm gonna get to some other ones. So that was so much fun. That was such a joy to read and look at the pictures. And I would definitely recommend it if you're a Downton Abbey fan. Okay, now we're at the book that made me feel like an utter moron. And this is Noopiming by Leanne Betta Samasaki Simpson. And as far as I can tell, I looked her up on YouTube, and I think she introduces herself as Leanne Simpson. And Nuptaming, the subtitle is The Cure for White Ladies. This is kind of an answer or a commentary responding to a book from 1852 called Roughing It in the Bush by Susanna Moodie, who is a Canadian author. And Roughing It in the Bush was considered a Canadian classic. Moodie was a white colonizing privileged woman who took a trip through the Canadian bush, as she described it, and writing a memoir about her experiences, the settings, the atmosphere. And she took on the stance of a white colonizer who believed she discovered some unclaimed territory and basically claimed it for herself and wrote her memoir on these experiences. There was never a thought to whose land it was, who resided on the land, who used the land as resources. In American history classes, in elementary school age, they're still learning that Columbus discovered America. And they're still learning what, the French and Indian War was about, and the Revolutionary War, and the creation of reservations across the country, and basically the theft of indigenous land, and the removal and extermination of indigenous people. So this book is not a surprise, and it is important. There are profound thoughts in this book, and Leanne Simpson is a Canadian Indigenous author and scholar, and this is her first, I believe this is her first book that they have labeled as a novel. It is not a novel. These are two of the pages. There's one sentence on each of these pages, and most of the pages have very little text. They are the thoughts and the descriptions of different characters that Simpson has developed based on Indigenous legends and stories from her tribal experiences and her community and family. So there's also towards the last third of the book, there is also poetry. And then at the back, she gets back towards the text format that she's used throughout the book. I felt like a moron because I still don't really know what I read. I don't understand the background. I don't have the knowledge of the Indigenous Canadian experience, nor should I, because that's not my experience. And this book was not written for me. This was written for an Indigenous community, for her to reclaim their history and their stories and their narrative, and to write it down. So I have no context to understand much of what is in the book. I feel that there's some brilliance here. The content of her writing is poetic and experimental is the perfect word to describe it. It doesn't conform to white Western experiences of a novel, the way it's written and the way it reads. And it's not supposed to. Again, it's not written for me as a white American woman. The poetry, I literally could not understand any of the thoughts put together. I don't have any of the background knowledge to get where she's coming from. That all said, this format did not work for me at all. I started to get a little resentful of purchasing a book for the amount of money that I purchased it for and having pages look like this. That's a really kind of lowbrow complaint to have for this type of a book. But it's not a novel, and when I pick up a book that is labeled as a novel, I'm expecting a narrative story. I'm expecting some development. There are plenty of books I read that are purely character-based, and there is no plot. There's very little plot. There is a very thin plot. This was none of that at all, and I just did not understand most of it. I did not feel I had the right to give the book a rating because of my lack of understanding and my lack of background knowledge. So I finished it, but I did not rate it on Goodreads. I don't feel I have the right to do that. I would definitely suggest you pick it up if you're interested. Read it, see what you can pull from it, see if you can read with her what she's trying to say. And if you know more than I do, tell me. Help me understand what I read. But I would definitely suggest picking it up for yourself. My review isn't negative, it's just kind of absent. Because I feel like so removed from the book, and so I want to stay removed from possibly telling what I think a review or a rating should be. I just simply don't have the right to do that. So, anybody has any thoughts on this book that you would love to share with me, I would really appreciate it. There are several other booktubers who I really admire and trust, who loved the book, and their reviews are out there. Sean the Book Maniac is one of them, and Brian from Bookish is another. And I will post those videos down below if you'd like to take a look at them. And I'll, just for the heck of it, I'll go out and see if I can find some more, and I'll post those links. So, that was it for my Bookish week last week. I think I did okay finishing 3 books. We'll see what I can do this week. I'm back to concentrating on Romola for my George Eliot 2021 read-along. That was supposed to be September's book, but as you know, if you've watched my videos, my brain fog prevented me from finishing it in September, so we've extended it to October, and once Romola is done, we will pick up Felix Holt as our last George Eliot novel for this year. And I will have read all of her novels. I read Middlemarch and Daniel Deronda last year. That's it for me for today. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching. Write a comment down below if you have any comments on the books I showed you or any of the thoughts I shared. And I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.